today from Cedars-Sinai. He is the co-director of the Brain Health and Alzheimer's Prevention Program there at Cedars-Sinai. His research focuses on early diagnosis and intervention in Alzheimer's disease. I personally believe this is the key for us going forward in finding a cure or prevention. He is introducing novel images and biomarker tools into the realm of diagnosis at earlier stages of this disease. He is also introducing novel interventions, both with regard to pharmaceuticals as well as comprehensive lifestyle changes that appear to be very effective in altering the course of the disease. Dr. Shirzai received his MD from Eastern Virginia Medical School, completed his residency at Georgetown University Hospital. He's completed fellowships at the National Institutes of Health, I'm used to saying just NIH, and University of California, San Diego Medical Center, and he has a doctorate at Loma Linda University. So we're very, very happy to have him today. We've asked him to drive all the way up from LA, and we know it's a tremendous favor that you're doing for us, and we couldn't be happier to have you here.
It's our
So
pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for staying post-lunch. How selfish she's being. She's just keeping it all for herself.
Another one, I'm sorry.
No, that's the 5th raffle. Something I did. There we go. So, after lunch, listening to somebody is just painful. And I'll make sure that it's even more painful by the time there's not on? There we go. I just have to pull it closer. So, I usually give talks about what Alzheimer's is and what dementia is and the mechanisms and everything else. But at the same time, I want to give this talk, which is, to me, probably the most important talk. We were just talking earlier about, the calamities around the world, and I was telling her that actually it's not that bad. That's a weird sentence to say after, the world is actually doing much better than ever before. Financially, everything else, even disease-wise, chronic diseases of aging, heart disease on decline, diabetes on the decline. Every chronic disease you can think of pretty much is on the decline, except one. And that's Alzheimer's. In the last 10 years, more than 70% increase in prevalence of Alzheimer's, and it's going to increase. And it's a product of how well we're doing in a way. The world has never seen this many people alive past the age of 50, no, or 60, or 70, or 80, or 90, 100 centenarians. We have over 80,000 centenarians in the United States right now. And this number, if we don't make any changes, if we have no further changes as far as treatment for heart disease, treatment for diabetes, treatment for cancer, it's expected to be 600,000 plus by 2050. The average age, which for the history of mankind has been around the teens to 20s, is going to be in the 50s in the United States. So we are aging, hopefully aging gracefully. But with that comes a problem. Our brain, the most complex organ that we know in this universe, is incredibly resilient, incredibly powerful, 100 billion neurons. Somebody probably gave some of these numbers early on, but I'm going to repeat it anyway, because I like them. A quadrillion connections, and a parallel processor. I mean, this is more powerful than any computer for the foreseeable future. And it requires 25% of your energy. It consumes 20 to 25% of your energy and oxygen throughout the day. So it's resilient. It's able to withstand a lot, but at the same time, it's also subject to a tremendous amount of stress. When you work that hard, 25% of energy, 24 hours, you think your brain rests when you sleep? Well, it does in a way, but it's working constantly. When people say that you only use 10% of your brain at any one point, it's wrong. You're using 100%, but for a lot of us, less efficiently. For some, even more less efficiently, but less efficiently. But we're using 100% of the brain all of the time. So it's under a lot of stress. We will see a lot a greater prevalence and incidence of Alzheimer's, and it's going to rise. For many reasons, one of them is that the population is aging. Those 65 and above, 10% risk, and it doubles thereafter. At 85, 47% are expected to have Alzheimer's or dementia. And initially we thought that it plateaus, but it doesn't. It keeps rising. We believe, my co-director there, my wife, Dr. Aisha shares that, we believe that from a great majority it's avoidable. And that's a different talk. I wanted to, but this is a talk about what happens when you get diagnosed. And this is at the heart of medicine. Doctors are not trained to do anything with this. Yet, that's what we started with. You know, when we take the Hippocratic oath, it's about do no harm. And in that statement is implied that you do whatever you can to make sure that the situation is created so that harm is not continued to the patient. But we don't have the time to do the kind of care and the kind of informing, the kind of resource allocation that can help families with a devastating disease like Alzheimer's or dementia in general. The disease is the costliest disease of them all. The second costliest is heart disease, $100 billion. Alzheimer's, $227 billion direct, and another $200 billion cost to the family when they lose jobs or give up, a day of work and so on and so forth. And this number is expected to just overtake our system in general, not just our healthcare system, the entire system in general. So by 2050, it's expected to cost $1 to $3 trillion. That by itself will collapse our system in general. So we have to do something to stop it, to slow it down. So that's where the policy making, advocacy, everything comes in. That's where everybody, whatever political affiliate, we have to stop this. And it is stoppable. We know that just by simple things as lifestyle intervention, you can significantly slow or abate the disease, or not get the disease in the first place for a great number. There's a small proportion that have strong genetic proclivity or genetic drive, and even there's a latitude, but for a great majority of others, there's a lot that can be done early on. But the important issue is, so now you've been diagnosed. What do you do then? And in most clinics, there is no information, no resource, nothing for the families. And that devastates the families. Because it's not just infection. It's not just palpitation. It's not just the kidneys not working, so you have to get up multiple times a night. It is personality, environment, family disease. It involves everybody. So when people used to come to me in the clinic, or even now they come to me in the clinic, I actually ask, there has to be one or other, two or more people that are caregivers, support team, or just family members there in the meeting. Because I say it's a disease of the family. There have been times where as many as 14 people have been in my room because it took the whole group. And it's a positive thing, especially when the grandchildren are there. The idea of empathy is not lectured, it's lived. So it's really important that we approach it that way. So now you've given a person a diagnosis of Alzheimer's. And what happens? Here's some Aricept, here's some Namenda, here's this, that, and the other, which most people are told that it will slow the disease. It doesn't. It doesn't. It's overstated. My whole life has been around this. I probably give less Aricept and Namenda than most general practitioners. Not that they don't work. They have their place. They absolutely do. But I don't want to overstate its effect where there are other things to be done. And because we're a pharmaceutical society, even the ones that say they don't like it, the evidence shows that people who left the doctor's office, and then before they said that they didn't like medicine, and then the doctor that gave medicine versus the doctor that didn't give medicine. Guess who got the higher rating? That gave medicine. This is magical. I just got the pill, So I tell this story to keep my score. I'm just kidding. But it's very important that we approach it in a much more holistic, broader way. The disease is a family disease. It's a community disease. there are entire communities that are overwhelmed. When we were in Loma Linda, we actually I gave over 100 talks in churches and synagogues and faith communities. I felt like I was a pastor, but I wasn't. But because it's the best place to reach certain communities. That's where you can do most of the education. Community centers and other places, and places like this, where we can actually create communities and link and give resources and provide resources and provide education. So this is it's about management, giving people resources and management. So this is going to be almost like a business talk, management. Well, how many people here have a business background or had a business or some sort? Oh, yeah. So it's going to be about visions, mission, goals, steps that need to be taken once somebody has the disease. It's very important that the diagnosis, once it's done, the planning is done early. I'd rather people come even at the point of MCI, mild cognitive impairment, which is pre-Alzheimer's, or even earlier, and have a plan of what will happen if, the ones that are high risk, if you get the diagnosis. It may be hard to consider these questions at first, but that fear should not stop you from planning, and should not stop the family from planning. Depending on the stage of the disease, the different approaches will be taken. And first and foremost, patients' wishes should be taken into consideration, or the person's, the recipient of the care, their wish should be taken into consideration. This is the list of needs that will accumulate over time. And a percent of elderly home care recipients needing help with selected activities of daily living. So this is a clumping of all the patients and across the different stages and everything. You can see that 42% bathing, dressing, eating, transferring. How often do we even talk about this in the clinics, in the hospital setting? So if not in the hospital and clinic setting, where? Where are the resources? Where are the areas that can teach you about these problems? ADLs stand for activities of daily living. The number of percentage of people who have 1 to 2, 40%, 3 to 4, 30%, 5 to 6 ADLs that need help, 30%. These numbers are foreboding. They're scary. Hours, 20 hours, 20 to 30 hours, 30 to 40 hours of the caregiver's time. Significant numbers. And who gives the care? There it is. It's the spouse, the daughter, the son is smaller, and others. The funny story there is that I have an 11-year-old boy and a 9-year-old daughter who's a talker. And she's very, very strong. They usually come to our talks, but today they were busy. So in one of the talks, I gave this, and afterwards she said, "Dad, on the way, can we stop and get some chocolate?" I said, "Chocolate? We don't." I said, "No." He said, "You do know who's going to be taking care of you when you're old." So there it is. Guess who got the chocolate and who didn't? So the different diseases. So we talk about dementia and then Alzheimer's. There are different kinds of diseases. Dementia is the big category. And then the different kinds of dementia are the frontotemporal, Alzheimer's is the biggest one, 60 to 80%, depending on which series you look at. Frontotemporal, Lewy body disease, Parkinson's and dementia, corticobasal degeneration, many others. But Alzheimer's, and each of them have different nuances. Once disease progresses past moderate to advanced, they all start looking the same because it involves the entire brain. Yeah. But it's early symptomology that matters. Now, the next thing I'm going to say, all of you are going to start worrying. Don't. Let me preface by saying that the joke in the clinic is that Sherzai is the preeminent dementia specialist, but I lose more coats and pens and things than anybody else. So yeah, that losing things here and there is not that significant. At least I tell myself that. But one of the hallmarks of the disease early on, I asked the family members, when did the symptoms start, and what was the common feature? And the patient, a lot of times, they say, "Oh, I'm fine. I can remember 50 years back. It's just the short-term stuff that I forget." Well, guess what? That's actually diagnostic of the disease. Not just that by itself, but that along with other things as well. Short-term, disproportionate to long-term loss. With frontotemporal, it's more categories and organizing and executive function, meaning multitasking, and sometimes behavioral issues early on. And frontotemporal happens a little earlier than others. Lewy body disease, visuospatial abnormalities and 20 to 30% hallucinations early on. Motor findings, like almost like Parkinsonian, so usually with Parkinsonian symptoms, along with cognitive and visuospatial stuff, it's Lewy body disease early on. Vascular, this is the one that we're very interested in. In the past, they used to say it's just 20% of dementias are vascular. Vascular is either a big stroke, or somebody has hemiparesis, or weakness, or language, or any of those. But actually, even multi-infarct, where there are so many small infarcts that they didn't notice the individual strokes, but there was like little drops. And then when you go back and think about it, the family notices, yeah, at some point I saw a little drop and so on. And then a third type, which usually people don't consider vascular, is when these micro strokes that happen, that you don't see the decline because it's so slow and gradual. And the person is slower in thinking, slower in speaking, and it takes them a few minutes or seconds to come up with an answer. And you see the slowness in walking and thinking and everything else as well. Parkinson's and dementia, there was a time that they thought that dementia was very rare in Parkinson's, but it's actually fairly common. And cognitive changes happen starting at the beginning, but minimal. But later on in the disease, it's almost 80% that have some cognitive features. So major issues with dementia. Depends on when, what stage. That's what the significant factor is. What stage are we talking about? Even MCI, which is pre-dementia. Communication, bathing, dressing, eating, activities and exercises, incontinence, sleep problems, hallucinations and delusions. For some, not everybody has all of these, but these are the issues. Home safety and wandering, driving, that's a big one, and visiting the doctor. Those are the issues and there are many more than that. This is just a short list that we have to be aware of. Establishing goals. Establishing goals is critical. Early on, establishing goals. I mean, that's important for everybody, every day. I really think that one of the most important things that we can teach in schools is how to create a vision, goals, and then how to achieve those goals systematically. But when you have a chronic disease in the horizon, that becomes even more significant. We approach it ad hoc, everybody waits for the Aricept. It's not that, it's this. Establishing goals. And the goals have to be established around one thing. The care recipient's own vision of life, throughout life. What was their goal? What did they want out of life, even late in life? And then you create goals, and then other issues as well. So what determines the goals is vision. What's the person's vision long term? I hate it when somebody, and I'll come to this again, Sudoku or some other games, oh yeah, my doctor said do crossword and Sudoku. If they make me do that, I'll just have a horrible time. I'll have depression. That's not it. So it has to be around the person's own proclivities, interests, goals in life, not just a cookie cutter concept that's given to you. Yeah, do this, 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 and this. That doesn't work. It hasn't worked in the past. That's why, nonetheless, the resources are critical. The resources have to be assessed, given where we're going, given what the goals are, and given that now I've learned the process of the disease, which we will not talk in too much detail here. What are our financial resources for the next 10 to 15 years? Human resources, meaning it's not just me, the wife or the husband. Who else will be there for us? And the conversations should be had. Equipment, environment, limitations, patience, emotional issues, resources, short-term and long-term goals. It has to be this specific. The plan has to be this specific. We're this specific about a little project management of a wedding or a birthday party. I've seen everybody has these lists of check, but we're not going to be this specific about quality of life of somebody. And by the way, when somebody has dementia, it's not just their disease, the whole family. So we're not going to plan like this for something that grand, and it will tremendously affect how the disease is perceived in the family as a burden or as a journey of hope, of resilience, and a journey of achieving goals that are set. Questions regarding vision, life trajectory, what things would be, the dementia patients would like to accomplish, bucket list kind of a thing. He or she's, where they see their purpose in life. You'll see my method is I go on little tangents, little trips, side trips. We went to Loma Linda to study the Seventh-day Adventist population, which is the healthiest and longest living population in the world. And there are actually other areas around the world that are that healthy. Yes, nutrition is a big factor. Level of physical activity is a big factor. But we believe that one of the biggest factors is purpose. Purpose-driven. If a person or a group or a family or a community has a purpose, whatever that purpose is, they do a lot better. So that purpose has to be established fairly early. And end-of-life issues have to be considered. Examples, I would like to live a joyous and autonomous life of dignity. Each of these terms can be further defined and operationalized. Because it's not, this joyous means something to them. Autonomy means something. You can't maintain autonomy, but then the focus becomes autonomy and not something else. So these are critical elements. Questions regarding resources. Given the projected cost of care, what are the financial resources? Who are the people that we can call upon for help? What are the resources at home? Regional resources, Alzheimer's Association, care facilities, physical therapy, physical trainer, clinic, hospital, the faith communities, all of these senior communities as well. Transportation. So all these must be planned and we must be aware of it. Limitations, same thing. Financial, space, people, distance from everything, that's very important. Transportation, medical conditions, and physical limitations. The medical conditions one is a complex one. That will take 2 or 3 talks right there. Because if you have 2 or 3 comorbidities or other diseases, how they're treated will affect everything else. So there should be a level of coordination between physicians. So here's another digression. One of the most important things you can do is have one doctor, be it a geriatrician or a family care physician, know that their job is to coordinate. Their job is not just to treat the blood pressure, which is easy. Their job, more important than just to treat the blood pressure, is to coordinate everything else. And you expect that out of them. And if they can't do it, you replace the doctor. That's critical. I think the most critical issue is that, because that's where everything goes wrong. Everybody's treating their own disease, independent of side effects of the treatments of the other diseases. There must be a coordinator. There must be a quarterback. Without a good quarterback, Michigan is having these problems. I'm from Pittsburgh, so.
When you say coordinate, can you give me coordinate specific?
Yes.
Specific what though? I mean, what are we looking for?
We're looking for, let's say that this person has benign prostate hypertrophy. That's assumed, yeah. And there are medications that go with that. Let's say that this person has high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, all these other things, as well as physical limitations. So each of those can affect each other. For example, if somebody's given medication for prostate, they have some cholinergic effect that will actually affect their memory. And if somebody who has physical limitations and they're not given physical therapy, that lack of physical therapy, which will make them less mobile, and then less social, and then disconnect them from, that will affect the cognition and everything else. So this list, you pick any disease, any condition, any specialty, I can tell you that it's going to affect the nervous system, the neurological condition. And vice versa. There's a great medicine doctor, Dr. Osler, who said that if a doctor learns any one disease, they learn all the diseases. Why? It's a closed system. They're all interconnected. But in the world of specialty and super specialty, we've become so myopic and so linear that everybody's just treating their own disease. And that has consequences, significant. Every condition and disease has consequences on others. And there has to be a coordination. If the primary objective is maintaining cognition, and I have a bias. We have these little jokes with cardiologists and others. You know, they say cardiology is important. I said, you know, we can replace the heart. We do. Cedars is the #1 cardiac transplant place in the world. We can replace the kidney, but you can't replace the brain, because then you're a different person. So if cognitive health and social health, and that is the most important. You can't do things that are giving you momentary gain, yet loss of that. Loss of hearing. A lot of physicians, they take it very lightly. There's some loss of hearing, that's it. It's critical when it comes to cognition. So we worry about certain vitamins. Here's your vitamin D because it's a little low. Yet the hearing is significantly affected and nobody's addressing it. Loss of hearing is a disconnection that actually propagates the disease, speeds up the disease. So that's the level of coordination given the vision. Without a vision of the patient leading this, it's going to be the vision of the specialist, driven by the time limitations of the day for the given medication. How myopic and narrow is that? Which is actually harmful, which is often harmful. Sorry, I'm getting in my own little tangent, but there we go. That's another one. So,
can we get a copy of this presentation?
It's that good, huh?
Yeah.
See how I set it up? Yeah. Yes, you can. If you go to Team ShareZai on either Facebook or Twitter, look how savvy I am. You can, yeah, ShareZai. That's our name.
Oh, you're
yeah.
Doing,
I promise you there will be less of me and more of my wife, which will be easier on your eyes. Yeah, but so long-term goals and short-term goals. Long-term goals are like strategy. What is the strategy? It's a yes, long-term, exactly. And short-term goals are step-by-step. I tell people the difference between cooking and neurosurgery, there's no difference. One is 16 steps, the other is 16,000 steps. The job of an educator, which we all are, is to show the individual steps to go there. The old, antiquated method of teaching was, and part of it was ego, especially in medicine. You have to learn this, and not much guidance on how to reach that because there's an ego thing. I know something that you don't. Instead of showing step by step for the person to get there. There is nobody that can't do anything if the steps are clear. So the step by step is critical in this. It's pivotal. And they should be measurable steps. So you all know about SMART goals. SMART goals, my kids, one of the first things they learned was SMART goals. I don't know if they keep it, but they still forget they're brushing their teeth. But that's okay. They're not going to like hearing that on the. But the SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. The relevant means relevant to the vision that the person set, relevant to the goals that the person set. If it's something completely tangential, like I don't like Sudoku and they're making me do Sudoku, all this will fail. It has to be around that person's mission. Timeout. So we'll talk about each of these, what specific, measurable, attainable, relevant would mean. Unwise goals, I'll keep everything to myself. So that's a fairly obvious one, that was too easy. Nutritional goal, unwise goal, I'll eat whenever there is time. I'll start healthy food plan in the near future. Or I'll lose weight. Why? How much? Nothing specific. We'll walk more often. What does that mean? And whenever you set unwise goals in anything, you actually don't just fail that activity. You fail many activities thereafter. This is a motivational theory. Whenever you create goals, and the goals are not specific and attainable, when you fail that goal, it actually takes away from your bank account of motivation. So it's really critical that you don't set goals, no, not really, but if you set goals, that you attain it. because that actually puts more, double or triple the amount of motivation into your bank account. But if you set goals and you fail them, like New Year's resolution, it doesn't just affect that activity, it affects quite a bit more than that, because you've lost your bank account of hope, and so that's critical, that it's a wise goal-setting process. Here's another unwise one. We'll work to get the license back despite the fact that he or she was diagnosed with moderate dementia. This is neither here or there. So examples of SMART goal, as the patient has had very little organized physical activity and just walks around the property once a day, the plan is for the patient to walk 3 times a day around the property for the next 2 months until reassessed and goal changed. So the colors are not coming here, but each of those was supposed to show up here. Specific, walking around the property once a day, right? Measurable, 3 times a day, 2 months. Attainable, the person can walk, they're not wheelchair bound, so that has to be relevant. And relevant, because it's to the goal that they were trying to achieve, one of the big goals, which was to walk freely and independently on their own. And time bound, 2 months, 3 times a day. That's specific. That's attainable. So examples of short-term goals: the patient has mild cognitive impairment and was recently provided with a walker for safe ambulation. Family caregivers report that the patient often forgets that he has the walker and is often found walking around the house without it, increasing risk of falls. Falls are our #1 nemesis. Everybody talks about dementia causing this, that, getting lost, not eating. It's the falls. The falls, patients that die from Alzheimer's, great majority die from the falls. So that's a critical thing to know. Short-term goal, using the spaced retrieval technique, which means a couple of steps, retrieve, and then the next time a little longer and longer. It's a little more complex. And visual cues. Patient will recall and regularly utilize walker correctly when ambulating in home at least 8 to 10 times independently. That's a SMART goal. This was the vision, the picture that was painted, and here is a SMART goal to achieve a directional change. Example of long-term: by the end of the year, patient will demonstrate safe use of walker to ambulate independently at home and will have no falls. That's specific, no falls. It could be even more specific. No falls in a period of 1 month, let's say. Patient will be 20% stronger in the leg muscles and have 20% better balance. That's measurable. You can actually measure those things. You can time-bound it, look at the strength, look at the, that's very, very specific. I can assure you that these things are more important for the health of a patient in chronic disease, not just Alzheimer's and dementia, in fact for just aging in general, than any medicine out there. Because it's the lack of these processes that actually make things fall apart. The do's and don'ts of communication. Communication is critical. So avoid being frustrated. Keep communication short, simple, and clear. Again, these are for a little more advanced dementia. We're talking about advanced, and it can be pulled back depending on how much better they are off. Tell the person who you are. Call the person by name. Speak slowly. That's something I should do always. Use closed-ended questions. Find a different way to say the same thing. Use distractions or fibs. I know that you don't want to see that one. If telling the whole truth will upset the person with dementia. For example, they come to you and say, how's my mom? And then you say, she died. And then the next day she died. Do you think that's helpful? That's just going to cause greater stress. It's also context dependent, but generally. Use techniques that attract and maintain the person's attention. Don't. Saying things like, do you remember? Try to remember. Did you forget? How could you not know that? I do that sometimes with my kids. Ask questions that challenge short-term memory. Talk in paragraphs. Yeah, exactly. Point out the person's memory difficulty. Avoid remarks such as, I just told you that. Instead, just repeat over and over. talk in front of the person as if he or she is not there. A lot of doctors do that. Yes, yes, yes. Those damn doctors. Use lots of pronouns such as there, that, those, him, her, it. Use nouns instead. For example, instead of sit there, say sit in the blue chair. Use slang or unfamiliar words. That will get me anytime as well. Slang. Use patron.
It says don't.
Don't use those. Yes, slang. Yeah. Use patronizing language or baby talk. Use sarcasm or irony. We will all do this sometime with each other, with everybody else, with the care receiver. But just being aware of it will reduce the frequency. Goal examples for communication. Joan will demonstrate increased word recall to improve overall expression of wants and needs by utilizing compensatory strategies such as description and our use of synonyms. 80% of trials with minimal verbal and visual cueing. Remember how previously I said, where is it? Don't use long paragraphs. There's an example of a long paragraph right there. I got lost in the middle of it myself. Yeah. I'll remake that song. Joan will locate and use target communication word cards, specific cards, stating common wants, needs to improve communication with caregiver. 8 to 10 trials with minimal verbal cueing. So very specific, using the cards to communicate 8 to 10 times with the caregiver. Goal examples, again for communication, correctly utilizing pain assessment chart, depicting areas of the body that are in pain. That's a very important one. Communication about pain becomes a little discursive when it comes with dementia. There's something going on that we are not sure about why. We have our hypotheses. Patients with dementia complain about pain more than others. Yes. Sometimes it's real, so we have to every time take it as if it's real. That's a given. So that communication about pain and discomfort, and a lot of it is driven by anxiety, which is a ubiquitous component of the disease. So it's really important that that communication about pain be very clear, and there should be a measurable system set up early on. Correctly locate and read label items and the quantification for that. Recall and demonstrate use of strategy of taking deeper breaths prior to speaking to promote increased volume. One of the things happens that they become hypovolemic, hypophonic. Parkinson's much more. In Parkinson's patients, one of the things that happens is micrographia, the writing becomes smaller, the speech becomes lower, the walking becomes smaller in steps, teapot they call it. That's why they say, you know, the big treatment. If you think you're walking this much, exaggerate it. And when they exaggerate, it becomes normal. When you're thinking you're speaking at a certain volume, speak louder. But that hypophonic nature is actually present across all dementias. And the communication is broken down, and since the person is already anxious, they're less likely to communicate. One thing that you will see is they become quite reticent and to talk. Less and less communication. And that's a bad sign, because that communication is needed to maintain the cognitive health. That's significant. So to promote communication, it's very important to promote them to speak louder and clearer, and then for and the rest of people to speak slower and louder as well. Patients with cognition. Patient will recall where specific items of clothing are placed. Quantify. How often? How often has it been going on before, and how often are you expected to do it? That's specific. Patient will demonstrate proper self-administration of medication by taking medication at correct dosage, time, and demonstrated documentation. Again, depending on what stage they are in. My goal is to maintain autonomy as long as is safe. Medications, that's a dangerous one. So when patients come in, I say, worry about several things. Your finances. There are industries out there. There are thousands of groups out there that they do cold calls. And they know if a person has dementia better than most doctors out there. And immediately they know what to do to get the money for the next supposed charity or supposed this and that. And despite my talk to my patients, More than 20 patients have lost thousands of dollars. Finance is one. Fall risk, fire hazard, driving, if they're still driving. Those are, and then later on, eating. Weight loss or diminished appetite is very common. Early on, this is not the talk for that, but I tell people to start weighing the care, care recipient at least once every other day, because you think they're eating well, but slowly they start losing weight. So those are the critical issues. Okay. Examples of teaching training: caregiver will demonstrate knowledge of safe liquid administration by thickening liquid. So this is on the caregiver side. Family members will demonstrate knowledge of dementia resources by locating them in the educational book provided. Caregiver will participate in training, education on using communication strategies. Let me go back to this hypothetical pamphlet. Forget about that. There are many resources now that give you information about dementia, Alzheimer's, the process, all the resources in your region. Make sure that you go to the legitimate ones. I'm not going to name them. You know them. Some of the universities, some of the partners, Alzheimer's, others, and get it from there. NIA, AARP, all these groups have resources, and there are plenty of resources, even local resources. But it's important to go to the legitimate ones because it's become an industry, and so that's the one thing to educate yourself with first. Examples of short-term goals: again, patient will use visual cues to locate his room independently 100% of the time, depending on stage again. Family caregiver will show return demonstration of compensatory strategies 100% of the time, the caregiver side. Patient will recall his memory strategy using spaced retrieval prompt. When you need to find your way, what do you do? Specific, very specific. So we got the idea here. Document, document, document. That's critical. I tell my patients have a little notebook, both for husband and wife or for partners. Critical to have that notebook. Not a big one. Why both? Let me give you a little sidebar there. Patients who have dementia, guess what the risk of dementia is for the partner? 600%. That's actually 6 times, but 600% sounds more, and you get the ooh and all. 600%. Why? Because we keep saying that this is a lifestyle disease for the most part. You have shared lifestyle, food, activity, mental activity, social activity. When I bring change, I want both of them to do it at the same time. So a notebook, here's a coffee table. I want one line as far as activity is concerned. One line as far as nutrition, and I give specific guidance on that. One line as far as mental activity is concerned. That's it. And if they have some chronic stuff, once in a while show their hemoglobin A1C if they have diabetes, or their cholesterol if they have hypercholesterolemia. So, but not more than 4 lines altogether, because that's how you fail. I've had patients come typed up 4 or 5 pages. I'm not going to read that, But 4 lines every day. At the end of the day, that becomes a motivation. That becomes a guideline. That becomes a source of measurable change. That's critical. I told you I'm going to put you to sleep. So document, document, document. That's critical for doctors as well. Oh, and if you have blood pressure, I actually think that once or twice a day, blood pressure should be measured. That's the big one. If people have blood pressure, and if they get into 160s once in a while, or 170s, we think that's equivalent to stroke. Not a big stroke, but micro strokes. So keeping an eye on the blood pressure is critical. It doesn't mean it has to be too low, because that can be damaging as well. But definitely, if you have a history of blood pressure, check it regularly. So document,
How
document,
many
document.
times a day?
1 to 2.
1 to 2?
Yeah, depending on how bad your blood pressure is. But at the beginning, at least twice a day to get a sense of how. Checking your blood pressure, something that vacillates from moment to moment, every 3 months in a doctor's office means nothing. It means we can charge you. That's what it means. Literally, that's what it means. Yeah. But when it really has significance is when it's checked in the home twice a day, then you get a good graph of where the blood pressure is. And check your blood pressure machine with a pharmacy or your clinic every 3 months just to calibrate. So critical.
And for batteries.
And for batteries. Yes.
Seriously.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it mandatory that someone take their blood pressure in bed before they get out of bed in the morning? Or can it be taken anytime during the day? And what relationship to taking your blood pressure pill?
Nothing in life is mandatory. I just wanted to leave you there for a little bit. No. What is best? I say preferable. I hate those rigid terms. Preferable, yes, especially morning because your cortisol levels. Remember that the highest amount of heart attacks are in the middle of the night, in the morning, because your cortisol levels and all their. So in the morning and then later in the afternoon. Also depends on your own patterns that you will learn. But in general, those are 2 good times.
I mean, before you can get out of bed.
You can get out of bed. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not helping you, am I? So, specific, that's right. And routine is very important. Routine is critical. Routine is good for all of us, but routine is critical. Now, when the disease advances, a lot of doctors tell the patients, don't travel. Well, the reason is that when the disease progresses and there's anxiety and an aggressive component and all that, it becomes quite problematic. But short of that, I say travel as much as you can. But know that there will be problems, so plan ahead. Because, I mean, it's a quality of life issue. I mean, if I'm going to get dementia and somebody says you can go to Barcelona or stay here, I will tell you, you better take me to Barcelona. I'm telling all of you, don't forget it. Some of my patients come and say, oh, we're going to Africa next week. I said, my prescription is take your doctor with you. But it's in that context that, yeah, routine should be maintained, but activities are important, especially if you know how to manage the situation. First of all, you know the situation that could happen and how to manage it. I'm losing people already. No, encourage independence. Studies have found that techniques called graded assistance combined with daily practice and positive reinforcement can go a long way in maintaining functional independence. It's not just a matter of dignity, and it is, that's the most important thing, of course, but it's a matter of maintaining health or motivation. When somebody feels that they're in control, they're motivated to maintain more control across behaviors. Once they lose control or perceived control, they could lose a segment of the control. For example, I'll give you an example. Medications. This person can't take care of their medication, but what could happen is you say, here are the containers, your daily disbursement. But if we agree as a contract that you should take your medicine, but it's okay if your wife oversees, at the end of the week, check if you've taken everything, and you can do the same thing for her. That's maintaining control. That's at the same time maintaining safety. So that's important. But if you all of a sudden take that away, especially if they're still able to do it to some extent, that motivation is lost, not just that behavior, but for other behaviors as well. So that's why it's important. This communication, minimize the distractions, speak softly, and all that stuff we said already. So I think my talk's running a little long, so I'm going to get past. There are these things. I'll provide the slides so that you can all have it. But the main thing about all of these, from bathing to communication to dressing, is distraction, redirection, and making sure that it becomes a routine, making sure that everything's prepared ahead of time so that multiple things are not happening in order for the outcome behavior to happen, and focus. And then, on top of that, what helps? I know this is going to sound soft, but we just did a Skype thing on music and the brain. Music helps. But it's very important to get rid of all the other confounds, all the other distractors, and just prepare for that outcome behavior. That's the critical thing. And same thing with eating. Limit distractions, serve small meals and snacks, because the appetite goes down almost ubiquitous. It's almost universal. So small meals throughout, because you don't want weight loss. I always say with weight loss, especially significant weight loss, there's immune deficiency, there's weight weakness in the muscles, there's increased falls. All of those things happen because there's weight loss. Make eating easy, and dentists, that's a whole talk there, dental care in the dementia patient. Exercises should be simplified for everybody. This is not just for dementia, for all of you. I tell people, the core of exercise should be in the home. And then whatever you do extra, great. You joined LA Fitness. That's fantastic. The 2 times that you went in a year. Yeah. But I say in the home. If I was Secretary of Health and Human Services, if any of you have the power to make it happen, I'll do 2 things. It sounds a little cheeky and not serious, but it is in a way. One is everybody would have a nutrition class. Not just read goofy books like Brain or some things like that. Second thing is everybody's TV would be connected to a recumbent bike, so it wouldn't work unless it You all agree? So you can actually write me in for Secretary of Health. That's critical, I think, but that's important because exercise is one of the few things that's been shown to actually increase mediotemporal lobe volume late in life. Exercise maintains muscle strength. Exercise maintains cardiac strength and blood flow to the brain. Exercise maintains sugar balance, which is important for the brain. The list goes on and on and on and on. So exercise should be in small increments and slowly increase and get rid of all the things that make it a failure. Some people say, if you want to exercise, why don't you run to the gym? I said, no, I want a driver to come to my house, take me, carry me I'm being facetious, but why are you making it difficult? I just want to exercise. So if it's proximal and easy, it's more likely to happen. As we age, and I'm including myself, a couple of things happen. Even when you're not aware, balance becomes an issue. Balance actually limits your ability to reach aerobic health, meaning get tired. You think you have perfect balance, but it's affected. The second thing's happened, the joints. So in a recumbent bike, I like that because balance is out, pain is reduced because there's no weight bearing, and boredom is reduced because it's right there in front of the TV or a magazine or something. And that's important. What I tell people, start with 5 minutes of strenuous exercise, and then the rest of the time just coast. Watch the TV, whatever it is, Jerry Springer, whatever. That's not good for your brain. But then like 2 hours later, another 5 minutes, and increase that duration. Because remember, there were some of the studies that came that people who exercised, younger people, and they're 30 minutes, yet the rest of the time they were just sitting. That sitting sedentary lifestyle actually negated the benefits for the most part of the 30 minutes. So it's important to continually be active, and the recumbent bike does that. You're sitting there comfortable, make that seat as comfortable, make it like a throne, make it the best seat, and you're just coasting. And then 5 minutes, really good exercise. I think I've given this talk so many times that I should get payment from the bike places. We'll go sleep issues. I think we'll go past this. Okay. With all of these, let me go back to sleep. Sleep is critical. I don't like medicines for sleep, but I give a lot of medicines for sleep because sleep is very important. Sleep, there was a time we used to take pride that I only sleep 4 hours a day. I'm one of those doctors that can go 4 hours, and I've damaged a lot of neurons by doing that. My talk would have been so much better if I had. But so sleep is critical. And the other part of sleep is sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is a condition where you are actually not breathing for periods of time during the night. You're damaging brain cells, and it's one of the underdiagnosed conditions because they say, "Oh, I'm not obese, so I don't have sleep apnea," or it's just snoring. If even there's a suspicion, let's say you sleep 8 hours, but you're tired during the day, sleep should be assessed because sleep apnea can be treated. Yes, ma'am.
How do you get a person who has sleep apnea and also dementia and refuses to use the machine,
Depends on, this is a good point that actually takes me to another discussion, which is there are battles that you take and there are battles that you don't take depending on the stage of the disease.
there are what?
Battles. Battle, that's my Pittsburgh accent. Battles.
Oh, battles.
Battles, there we go. I've never heard people say battle. But battles. Churchill said, when you fight many little battles, you lose the war. So depends on what stage they are in. For example, nutrition. If somebody's motivated to come to me, you don't want to hear my nutritional advice to them. It's eliminate sugar, eliminate saturated fats, go into a plant-based diet, more nuts, da da da. But if somebody who's here first time has eaten the same food all their life, I'm not going to tell them to do all that because then I failed them. They're going to shake their head, they're going to hug me, they say, great, they're going to go home and ignore it and just ignore everything I said. So I say one thing, nutrition. If you're going to do anything, eliminate the sugar. So you take your battle, you take the step that can be done. When it can't be done, you don't take it on. If the person is anxious and the dementia has advanced, sleep apnea treatment with a CPAP machine that gives you claustrophobia for anybody is difficult. So that battle shouldn't be taken on. Other goals should be set.
So forget it.
So forget it.
Forget it.
I can't say that. I just copied you. But for that situation where the person is very recalcitrant and resistant, and there are other battles that you can take on to win that makes the quality of life still better, take those on, as opposed to something that's almost next to impossible. Okay. Same thing with all of these. Routine, routine, routine. Okay, we're coming to an end. This is my acronym. Yes, everybody likes acronyms. I spent quite a bit of time doing this. So, neuro. Nutrition, E for exercise. How do you find something for you? I found unwind for stress reduction. That's pretty good. R, restful sleep. This is actually accurate. It's not just sleep, it's restful sleep. And optimizing mental and social activity. So that's critical, especially pre-Alzheimer's, pre-dementia. That's critical. You can avoid, for 90% of people, Alzheimer's can be avoided in their normal lifespan. Normal lifespan at this point is 80, so this can be avoided. So nutrition, it's a complete separate talk, but I just told you. Mediterranean diet, Mayan diet, which is mostly plant-based, less saturated fat, no saturated fat, but you can have fat. Fat's not bad. Olive oil and all that is good. Fried avocado and all that. So that's a separate talk. Exercise, we talked about it. Stress reduction. Stress is damaging to the brain. It doesn't just affect your focus, it's actually damaging to the brain. So relax. The wine studies, that wine drinkers supposedly did better in X, Y, and Z. Well, we think that it's not the wine because it's alcohol. How could it be good for the brain? But it appears that wine drinkers are just more relaxed. So if you can do the relaxation without the bottle of wine, it's better. Because the bottle of wine will kill your brain. So. And sleep and optimizing mental and social activity. Social activity. The most critical thing. You guys, I'm preaching to the choir. Because you're here. So you're social people. Look at how close these two are sitting. That's giving me anxiety. But social activity is critical to maintain as late as possible. Now, that comes with a caveat. With the disease comes, and even early on, a millisecond of dissonance, meaning the conversation, the person's not catching it as quickly as before. By millisecond. They can't get to the point where they can interject with their thoughts a few seconds. That creates dissonance, discomfort inside, and that subconsciously or even consciously, but mostly subconsciously, makes them withdraw. So if family members are aware, they will actually optimize the situation. A group of friends that know about this, speaking slower and creating space for the person to jump in to give their opinion. Well, that by itself gives you years of great social activity. A simple act as that. The family is aware of that dissonance and creates a circle of people that are aware of that, and that circle creates the space for the person to jump in and continue the conversation. How beautiful is that? You should write a book about that. So this is nutrition. We talked about exercise. Avoid long hours of immobility. Balance is important because of falls. One of the things I say is, one of the things for balance you can do is just next to the table, stand, get your hands away and back on. So simple things like that. Again, remember, health is in your living space, not in LA Fitness. Yes.
I would like to interject, please, sir.
Yes.
There is an activity that is provided free. There are 33 classes in Oxnard.
Is this an advertisement?
No, it's really not. It's called Bone Building.
I don't mind
It's a
that.
national program.
Okay.
Twice a week, you can use weights if you want to.
Perfect.
It's
All those things.
Yeah, and there are many others like that. There are many others. Please look at the resources. Make sure that, unwind, music, and not, you can't play Beyonce for somebody who's never heard Beyonce. I like Beyonce. I'm not trying to be hip, but it's that person's music. Let me give you a story. I'll call her Miss Collins. My wife has heard this story so many times, so it's okay. So this lady was in the hospital. I was doing rounds with all the residents. It's always a fun, as a neurobehaviorist, it's a fun thing to go around. So the patient had dementia, mild, but had an infection, so I had not spoken for months. I go to next to her bed, and I say, tell me about her. The residents, so they're telling me sodium is this. I said, no, I'm not interested in that. I can check that myself. Tell me about her. I said, no, what did she used to do? They said she was a piano teacher for 60 years. Okay. I said, okay, Miss Collins. Blank staring into space. They're like, the residents, I can see they're getting agitated. Like, why are you talking to her? We don't. Miss Collins. No. Miss Collins, who's a better composer, Beethoven or Mozart? And very slowly she doesn't turn her head. Their eyes were looking at me, but then when somebody just focused on you, just locks his head. What a stupid question. So, it is a stupid question. And then after that, we used music to kind of connect. I call this the islands of consciousness. I've written about consciousness and islands of consciousness. For her, the biggest island was music. You're worried about sodium? Human consciousness. So, using music, she never became normal, but we were able to pull her back to conversation. So, that's why it's important. Okay, so that's the talk, and that's the purpose. That's the talk, and that's the purpose. Not sodium, not beta blocker, not Aricept. It's about dignity. And it's a multi-modal system which involves the family, the community, at every level. That's why we used to go to the community every weekend. Other people went to the church for other purposes, which is good. I do that too. But we went there to connect the community. Perfect place where the community can connect and support. And they did the best job. The synagogues, the faith communities, the community centers. This group, so it's about this. So that's it. Thank you so much. So teamsharesci.com will be coming. Oh, here it is. My wife told me.
And Instagram too. I'll follow you on Instagram.
I can assure you I'm not that savvy. Yes, ma'am. Please give us feedback. The whole purpose of this, there's no money game, nothing. The whole purpose of this is to create a community and communicate, learn from each other, and get a movement. the political system is not as well aware as it needs to be about this disease and the support structure. And people like that do all the work. By the way, they do about more important work than we do. No, actually, we do pretty important work. Yeah, I'm not going to be one of those. Yeah, but we all, as a team. Thank you so much. Questions? Yes, sir.
Question and a comment. Comment is, it kind of expands on your talk about music. There's a movie on Netflix, a documentary that's maybe a year or two old called, I think, Alive Inside, that shows how personalized music for people wakes them out of their, momentarily, they're not communicative and they will start singing or dancing, they used to play in a band or whatever. So anybody who wants Netflix, look at it, it's inspiring.
We'll share it here. Absolutely.
What did he say? It's called Alive Inside.
Alive Inside.
Got it, thank you.
And what role does Alzheimer's play in mortality? People die from Alzheimer's, or is it they die from other things while they're going through Alzheimer's?
That's a big discussion. It's actually not a discussion because we all die from other things. If you have heart disease, yeah, your heart stops, but the other systems are affected, so therefore, in Alzheimer's, people with Alzheimer's have more falls, so they die from the falling. But it's the Alzheimer's that causes it. They have more aspirations, but people who have Alzheimer's have more aspirations. So actually, Alzheimer's causes aspiration and causes more of that. So infections, they have more infections. So it's at the core is Alzheimer's, but there are secondary causes that actually get you there. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that some people's voices get very low.
Yes.
That's my husband's situation, and I don't really know how to help him speak louder because I feel as though I'm forcing him to do something
Yeah.
he's not able to do.
Again, it depends on the stage. If the person is fairly cognitively still available and there, and they're willing, then there are therapies. Speech therapists can give you methods exactly, and then you can also do them in a very calm, gentle way, which you see saying that speak big, speak louder, because what you think you're speaking is actually very, very low, and I can't hear it. So, and you make a goal, an achievable goal, which is today. Let's see if we can do it 3 times, and then you reinforce. I heard you, fantastic, and that becomes almost a subconscious process. But if it's more advanced, then no, it causes more anxiety.
Your knowledge, your compassion, and your passion, and your presentation skills are awesome.
Just one more thought, you might want to try to do the presentation on a bicycle.
It might actually do that.
Well, we're all on a bicycle.
There you go.
That's a better idea. Yes. Yes.
It's called spin class.
Good class.
Spin here then.
So was I right? Did not disappoint, right? So, yeah, now everyone's awake, right? You want to go home and start looking at your life. I know I do. All right, let's do some raffle prizes.